Happy Friday. Welcome to the Wolff Den. Today we welcome Todd Radom to the show. Todd, how's it going today?
Matt, how are you? Thanks for having me aboard.
Doing great. We're going to talk a lot about sports. We're going to talk a little bit about tickets. We're going to talk about artwork. We're going to talk about books. Let's start there. You published a book that just came out. Tell everybody. Well, first of all, I hate to introduce people. I'd rather let them introduce themselves and brag on yourself a little bit. Tell everyone who you are, what you do, and the main reason why we're here today.
Sure thing. I appreciate it. So I'm Todd Radom. I am many things, but I am a designer, illustrator, typographer, brand consultant, all having to do with professional sports. I do other stuff, but the core of my work has been in professional sports for the last 30 years. I have designed, team identities, Super Bowls, AllStar Games, things like that. And I'm also a writer and an author. I've got a new book out, relatively new, co-written with my buddy Chris Creamer from sportslogos.net. It's called Fabric of the Game. It's the stories behind the names, the looks, and the uniforms of every team in the history of the NHL. And then a couple of years ago in 2018, hardcover, which now is in paperback, my loving homage to some of the most, air quotes, questionable uniforms in the history of baseball, and that's called Winning Ugly. So I've been involved with sports for a long, long time, and that's what brings us here.
Yeah, so I always, there's always a lot to unpack every time, and I want to go back. We'll talk a lot about Fabric of the Game, which is the hockey book. But what's the ugliest uniform, just to tease people? Is that, what do you think is the ugliest, and what trends do you not like?
Well, I constantly say this, Matt, but ugly is in the eye of the beholder.
Of course, yeah.
I used to have a bulldog, and I would walk down the street with this bulldog, and I remember an older lady once came up to me and looked and said, "She's so ugly, she's beautiful."
Yeah.
So, having said that, I am a child of the 70s. The 1970s were a time when our sports uniforms were reimagined, reinvented, and sometimes these experiments took the place of a grease fire, right? So, there are a couple of really ugly ones. The White Sox of the late 70s with the floppy collars, untucked shirts, shorts for a couple of games in 1976. Those are right up there at the top of the list. I don't know. We could go on, but I think you got to start there and work our way down.
So Pug is my favorite dog. I think they're, ugly cute. So I get exactly what you're saying. Just to talk about uniforms real quick, what bothers me is when if you go out and I see a red or pink or yellow Yankees hat. Like, I hate when the Gators wear black. Black is not in their color. So to me, that's like, I'm very superstitious about certain things. I'm a traditionalist. I like, keep the color. Yeah, if you have to have one game that's a special thing, like the Fighting Irish wearing green, that makes sense. The Gators wore like a Gator scale type thing. That makes sense. But to me, I don't like, when they do that. But at the end of the day, if you're a fan, people are going to generally buy it regardless of if you rebrand or, they're going to want, maybe they'll wear their older stuff, but the people will buy new stuff. So there's no harm in experimenting, right?
Well, I separated it into two pieces. The red Yankee hats that you reference, that's fan wear. And we all have the ability now to express ourselves. And if you want to wear a pink Yankees hat or, sky blue Red Sox hat, more power to you. But there is something that changes once this hits the field of play or the rink or the hardwood or whatever you want to call it, right? And I think that at that point, our uniforms sort of have to walk this fine line between, function and form, right? So I'll give you a perfect example. Right now, when we see this every single night, and I hear a lot about it, you look at a particular NBA game, and especially if we're looking at our devices, we have no idea what teams are playing. I see the Lakers out there in blue. Well, the Lakers are purple and gold, and they have been for time immemorial. So what is that all about? The functionality of that has been stripped away in many cases. But
Selling new jerseys, right? I mean, selling new merchandise. Is that the
yeah,
driver?
I mean, and in the case of the NBA, this is a Nike-driven initiative, and I have a lot of questions. Let's just put it that way.
It's all about the almighty dollar. Like they could convince someone to change jersey numbers and be like, go crazy with it, right? I mean, if someone who's like a top selling jersey, all of a sudden he changes, let's say, I don't know, Tom Brady wants to not be number 12 anymore. Who knows? Whatever it is, it's the merchandise business is, billions and billions of dollars. And so
it is, and I'm always cognizant of the fact, because I work with leagues, with teams, with different licensees, people who apply the logos to stuff, right? And the fact of the matter is that our stuff that we need to apply this to varies well beyond uniforms and merchandise, right? I mean, there's a guy who I always say who has to take a logo and he has to stamp it into a belt buckle in one color. There is a groundskeeper who has to paint these things on the field of play. Think about our in-arena, in-stadium experience and the fact that these, the artwork is moving and it's gigantic and, it's seen in LED. So, on my end, I think well beyond uniforms and selling merchandise.
Well, Frank is down in Miami. He says the Miami Vice uniforms, that was the turquoise and pink ones.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, okay, so, we had those, we had a couple of variations. We've had a couple of variations for a couple of years. When those first hit, it was like really cool because I think that there were some very relevant aspects of that. The script lettering, right, which was lifted from the old Miami Arena, was really cool. The colors, the sense of place and time. But now we're a few years in and we have, split gradient colors. I think the usefulness of it, if you want to look at it that way, has been kind of squeezed dry to some extent.
Yeah. Well, they're going to keep squeezing, that's for sure. All right, so let's talk about fabric of the game. We'll talk about fabric of the game, and then we'll move backwards to sort of get, how this whole thing started and where you got into it. But tell everybody about fabric of the game and, whatever you would like to share.
Yeah, so, we root for our teams, and we're very loyal to the colors and the looks. And in some cases, the colors and looks connect generations. So in the case of the NHL, you think of the New York Rangers, the Broadway blue shirts, right? They have worn substantially the same look with a couple of little hiccups here and there since they were founded 75 years ago, 80 years ago, right? And even longer than that. And then there are teams that are newer and so I think that our concept with this book was, okay, we take some of these things for granted. Why are the Rangers blue and red? Well, maybe there's not a reason, but why are they even called the New York Rangers? There's a story behind that. When we think about our newer teams in the NHL, there were fan contests to name teams like the Minnesota Wild, right? The Tampa Bay Lightning are named Lightning for a reason. Why are their colors the way they are? But we kept digging and went really deep because we explore every team in the history of the league, including a bunch of teams that were 1 year and out or only existed for a few games 100 years ago. So it was a really immersive experience, and telling these stories was really cool. Researching the stories was really cool.
So what are you a fan of? Are you a fan of a team just staying and not touching like the Rangers, like the Yankees, or do you like experimenting?
Well, I think it depends.
Who's your hockey team, by the way?
I'm nominally a Rangers fan, but pretty much a hockey fan in general. I will admit to kind of really being into it at one point and then falling out of love with the game at another point. We have different things to do in our lives. I loved the Bruins for a while when I was a kid, fell in love with the uniforms, But to answer your question, Matt, I think that there are teams that have the ability to burn it down and start from scratch. And then there are teams like the Yankees, as you referenced, the St. Louis Cardinals in baseball, who should probably never change. You could paint around the edges a little bit, but there is such heritage and equity that in many cases dates back so many years. You really got to be careful if you're a gatekeeper of these franchises, to handle that very carefully.
I mean, they always talk about, like, it's always been a dream of mine to wear the pinstripes, right? I mean,
That's right.
You hear players say that. So I grew up a Devils fan. Marty Brodeur is my all-time favorite. I live here in South Florida, so I root for the Panthers also to do well. Hopefully they'll get back. They're a weird franchise, the Panthers, but hopefully they'll get back on track. So the book, it's you got a lot of pictures in there. You're telling stories. What's your favorite part of the book?
Well, I think the fact that it is, it's two things. We tell stories, we research stuff, we debunk myths in many cases, and it's very pictorial, as you said. We've got 100 photos. I did 50 illustrations for the thing. So it's I believe, a nicely paced book with a little bit of something for everyone. And if you are a Panthers fan, we talk about the original look of the team, and of course, that's a team that went to the finals, like right out of the chute, right? And they have kind of two very bifurcated, split looks. And the current ownership went to what I think is a great look right now, and it's I don't know if it's a forever look necessarily, but it's solid, and it reflects the franchise as it is today. But I think part of the magic of, and we do talk about this in the book, part of the magic of some of these, longer standing franchises, the Canadiens being a great example for the purposes of fabric of the game. The Montreal Canadiens uniform and logo connect so many great players, all those Stanley Cups. It's over 100 years old. Now, last night we saw the Canadiens trot out in blue reverse retro uniforms, which I thought really looked pretty cool because they still look like the Canadiens, right? So, like I said, I think there's a little bit of something for everyone in fabric of the game.
Yeah. So if you're just joining us, my friend Brent, who is his brilliant high comment every show, hi Brent, told me that I need to reset. Great advice. We're talking to Todd Radom, author of Fabric of the Game, author of Winning Ugly, creator of many designs in the major leagues, Major League Baseball, Super Bowl logos. We're talking about his book, Fabric of the Game, which touches on the NHL and uniforms and origins. How do you know where to stop? Because, you probably could have doubled or tripled it, right? So, what would you have loved to have included that you didn't get to?
Yeah, I think you nailed it, Matt. It's easy to start, but how do you know when to stop? And I think
version 2 or 3.
Well, you don't want a 2,000-page doorstop book. You want to have something that's going to sell, that's going to be accessible. And some people are obsessed with logos. Some people are not, right? So I think part of the balance here was not depicting every single little noodly change. And also obtaining art is a very difficult thing. You could spend a lot of money. We've got Getty photos in here. And at a certain point, you don't want to put out a book that's going to cost $500 and weigh 68 pounds, right? So I think defining it to broad brushstrokes about, the why, if we're depicting the Florida Panthers, we're not going to get into necessarily, we could have every single uniform that team has ever worn. But I think describing the looks in broad brushstrokes and depicting the core of it got the job done.
And so why the NHL? Because, you could have written a book about baseball and football and basketball or some, maybe an offshoot sport like soccer. Why NHL?
So a couple of things. My co-author, Chris Creamer, is located in the Toronto area. He had done some work with the Hockey Hall of Fame several years ago in anticipation of the NHL's 100th season. And, we're back and forth, and we've talked about collaborating on a project for a long, long time. And it just seemed like all roads led to the NHL and to hockey. First of all, hockey uniforms, to me, they really kind of have it all, right? You've got all this beautiful striping. The crest on a hockey sweater is everything. So, the logos are big. If you think about football, logos on football helmets in the NFL really didn't start to kick in until 1960. and the uniforms are essentially, numbers with colors behind them. So there's not a ton to talk about there. Baseball is another story. Basketball is another story. To do the entire history of the NBA, I think will be a challenge if we go down that road, because you've got a ton of teams that just came and went in the early years of, the Basketball Association of America and the National Basketball League. So you start with hockey, and you've got something that is definable and accessible, and we had great access. I went up to Toronto and spent a couple of days at the Hockey Hall of Fame, and we looked through sweaters, we looked through old printed material, and it just, seemed like the right place to begin the journey.
I've never been to the Hockey Hall of Fame. I'm going to assume you've been to Canton and Cooperstown.
I have spent hours and hours and hours and days of my life in Cooperstown, down in the stacks, down in the areas that are not publicly accessible for the last 30 years doing research. I have never been to Canton. I have been to Springfield many a time. As a matter of fact, I did the logo for the Basketball Hall of Fame, which dates back to 1997 or so. So I've spent a certain amount of time up there, not for a while. But these are special places, and the people who maintain these archives are, birds of a feather, as far as I'm concerned. We're all the same people.
Is there one that you would say, I can only go to one? Where are you recommending someone go? Is it
Cooperstown?
Cooperstown?
Cooperstown. The experience of Cooperstown, I think, is really special. And it's funny. I was talking with a friend of mine yesterday, who I've known since college days, which is a while ago. And the guy's a big baseball fan, big Yankee fan. And he said to me, I've never been to Cooperstown. And I said, I can't believe you've never been to Cooperstown. And then I thought about it, and I said, well, of course. Cooperstown, part of the thing that makes it special is the fact that it's not easy to get to.
Not easy.
You're going to be passing through on the way to any place else for the most part. Yeah. So, it's like a pilgrimage, and the reward once you get there is having this very immersive experience. The most beautiful village in America, all about baseball. And so it's a little bit different. And I love it, and, can never get enough of it.
Are you a beer guy?
I am a beer guy, and that's another reason to go up to Cooperstown. Yeah. Excellent beer.
Have you been to Omegang?
I have been to Omegang. As a matter of fact, not the last. I was actually up in Cooperstown just about a year ago right now in the winter, right before things shut down. But the last time I was up there in nicer weather was a couple of years ago. I did a book signing for Winning Ugly at the Hall of Fame, and then had lunch outdoors at Omegang. It was fantastic. Great.
The beer is great. I hear they have good food now. They always have good music going there.
Yep.
I got to get back. It's been a long, long time since I've been to the Hall of Fame, and I got to get back. On the topic of Hall of Fame, I want to get your opinion on the voting. We have a league that is inducting no one into the Hall of Fame, which seems outrageous to me. But the thing that really bothers me about Hall of Fame voting is when you retire, your stats are your stats. They don't get better with age. So my opinion is, let's figure out a way to say, hey, you're done. You're either a Hall of Famer or you're not a Hall of Famer, and not keep people on the ballot and, 10, 11%. The only thing that's going to change is getting, the people who have the votes having new, like they're gone, and new people. So maybe we have to change. I don't know. What's your opinion on that?
Well, I'm going to disagree with you, because I think that the value of certain statistics changes, right? Case in point, the guys who are seen as compilers, or a guy like Edgar Martinez, or a guy like Tim Raines. Tim Raines didn't make it into the Hall of Fame for years. Edgar Martinez, it took a long time. A guy like Bert Blyleven, who, to me, growing up in the 70s, I don't know that he was necessarily like, the elite. Basically, what I'm saying is we used to value wins in a way that we don't value them now, nor should we. So I think that it's always changing. I think that when we talk about the Hall of Fame, we talk about, okay, we have our inner circle of, Willie Mays, Hank Aaron, Joe DiMaggio, Ted Williams, Babe Ruth, blah, 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 right? And, that's always that way. But, how big a hall do we want?
Also? Yeah, that's the problem, right?
Well,
as you're talking about, you would have voted him in first, right?
Who?
Tim Raines, you would have voted him in from the start.
Well, I think there's a certain amount of hypocrisy here too, Matt, because of the fact that you look back historically, and it took Yogi Berra years to get elected to the Hall of Fame, right? Why has Mariano Rivera been the only unanimous choice? Why did so many people leave Ted Williams and Hank Aaron off the ballot? It's stupid, and furthermore, and I'm just going to like put my toe right on the third rail of the conversation.
This is why we're here.
Yeah, the discussion about performance-enhancing drugs and morality is a very difficult one. Yeah, and I always say, Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens were Hall of Famers before they went down this route that they clearly went down. And am I going to be like the arbiter of morality and say wag a finger and say you shouldn't be in here? And the criteria is messed up as well. So I think that listen, it leads to conversation, which is fun and good. And at the end of the day, I think a reasonably big haul is a good thing. There are certain guys who are in there right now, which, was Phil Rizzuto a Hall of Famer on the basis of his career? I'm not so sure. I never saw him play.
Yeah, we could have 3 shows on the Hall of Fame. People are so passionate about it on both sides, and Pete Rose, he belongs in the Hall of Fame, right? I mean,
No, he doesn't.
You don't think he does?
No, I saw Pete Rose play, and I acknowledge his excellence, and he is in the museum. But Pete Rose walked past this door every single day of his career that said, if you bet on baseball, you can be banned from the game when he walked in that door. And that's a giant middle finger in a way that, Barry Bonds never having tested positive, right? I mean.
Yeah, I get that, but that was a manager too. Like Pete Rose as a player would be different than Pete Rose as a manager, no?
I don't know. Baseball has a funny thing with gambling. And it all stems back to the Black Sox. And again, long before you and I were ever alive. And now, of course, we're going to see, we're going to have the ability to bet in stadiums now. So these things do change. But I think that part of Pete Rose's issue involves his lack of contrition. Yeah. He went about it all wrong. And, if at some point, like so many other public, figures in all kinds of places, if you have a sincere apology and you quote unquote rehabilitate yourself, it goes a long way. And he never made an effort to do that. So it's kind of like, what? That's what you get.
I agree with that part. And I think that hurts a lot of the steroid people too, get just caught like just lying. Like why lie about something that you're going to get caught doing? It's amazing to me in this world how many people lie knowing that the receipts are right there.
Yeah, I mean, listen, here it comes back to morality, right? Legislating morality, which is a very slippery slope to me. I think that, Clemens and Bonds being the primary poster children, for this particular era, you've got voters who now have probably, never seen them play coming up, right? Because they will have been retired for enough years. And I think, as is the case with so many things, history has this very long arc. And it's difficult to judge these things in the moment. And, things will shake out fairly, I think, at a certain point. It's going to take a while.
Well, but to go against your point with Rose, isn't it very clear in the rules that you can't do performance-enhancing drugs?
No.
Is not?
Not when Clemens, the 2003 steroid test.
They were doing it, okay.
Right, and also, again, the Hall of Fame's criteria, morality and all this stuff. But I think that here's an important thing to point out. The fact is, like I said, Pete Rose, there is a ton of stuff to learn about Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame, in the public displays. You can see, last time I was there at least, it talks about his record for most hits in the career. It has artifacts that deal with him as part of the big red machine. If he's not on a plaque, it's one thing, right? But it's not like he's been erased from the history of the game. And he shouldn't be.
And it's educational. I mean, it's learning about I went to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and there's a lot, Avril Lavigne is in there. She's not going to probably be in the Hall of Fame, but there's stuff about her, like pioneers and, information. It's all about educating people about the game. So
Yeah.
I think it's a travesty.
Tell a story. Museums tell a story, and and again, I think that you've got writers voting on Hall of Fame candidates. In the case of baseball, there are implicit biases. I think it's great that people like Jay Jaffe, who I know very well, have brought in new statistics to look at things in a little bit of a different way, and the value of that is the ability to look at forget the steroid generation, but again, a guy like a Tim Raines or an Edgar Martinez, and see what they brought to the game in ways that maybe we didn't think about at the time as much as we might now.
Yeah, I mean, it's I think there's points on both sides, which makes it so tough to be like, yeah, you can see this and you can see that. Who's the best player, non-controversial, not in the Hall of Fame?
Wow. I mean, you've got to obviously leave guys who are playing now, into a little, hey, listen, wow. I mean, the controversial ones are not in it for a reason, right? I think that all right, I will say that you've got to look to guys like Minnie Minoso, who played for the White Sox in the 50s, who, didn't have the opportunity to start his career out. How about Buck O'Neil? Why is Buck O'Neil not in the Hall of Fame? The least controversial figure in baseball. He should be in the Hall of Fame, right? You've got, you do have guys, there's a discussion about Gil Hodges. Never having seen Gil Hodges play, I can't really speak to it, but there are people, out there. Dick Allen, right? Ferocious hitter. I mean, didn't have a lengthy peak necessarily, but I think he's going to make it.
My dad, I was just showing it to someone yesterday. I don't have it on my desk here, but my dad, and I have no idea, I got to find out the origin of it. He gave me 3 autographed baseballs, and I think it was like the 46 Dodgers because it has Jackie Robinson, Campanella, Hodges, wow. And half of them are, like a lot of it is faded, so you can't see it, which doesn't matter because I'm never going to get rid of them anyway.
Right.
Yeah, that's probably my favorite memorabilia. What do you have a favorite memorabilia that you've gotten?
I am not a huge collector necessarily, but I've got some stuff that's very special to me, things that I've been involved with. I've got some autographs, but not too many. I collect press pins, which are, VIP media pins. Yeah. From World Series and AllStar games. I love them because they're not sold to the general public. I love them because they are great little pieces of art and design that are all about a specific moment in time. I've got some game used, a couple of game used things. I've got some autographed baseballs of, players that I admire, but not too many. And I've got tickets, which I know you and I have talked about before.
We'll hit upon tickets towards the end here. Looking forward to seeing them. Let's talk a little bit about how we all came today. How did you get to this moment? Where'd you grow up? What was the journey to get to to where you're at, and then we'll hit upon each thing as you go.
Yeah, so I was born in New York City. I grew up in the area. I come from a family of artists. I always say this. I am a 4th generation working artist, people who have made their careers in the arts. And there are various ways to do this, and it's not necessarily easy, but I'm lucky because, I'm a kid who doodled and drew and did what I did when I was little, and I was never discouraged from pursuing a career in the arts, knowing that it was not necessarily an easy path, right? So a couple of examples. I always cite my father as sort of a creative jack of all trades. At various times, he was a photographer, a copywriter, a designer, worked in advertising, blah, blah, blah. My grandfather was a fine artist and illustrator. I've got a brother who was a photographer. I've got a cousin who was a jazz drummer. I've got, a niece who is a designer. So, it's very much in the DNA, right? I went to school at college at School of Visual Arts in New York City, East 23rd Street. Now it's spread out a little bit further. And when I graduated college, I went into book publishing. My first jobs out of college were in book publishing, on staff at big book publishers, designing covers. And I worked for my last job on staff was at Viking. right?
Okay.
Penguin Books. And I got a lot of sports design because it's something I was interested in. It's a baseball book. Give it to Todd, right? And so that allowed me to accrue a portfolio, went off on my own. Long story short, when I started working in sports design in the early 1990s, it was a tiny, tiny field. I mean, there were literally a handful of people who specialized in this. And now it's, gigantic. And I always joke around and say, back in 1992, if you were going to have a sports design conference, it would probably be like 8 guys, and it would all be guys. And we could go to a bar and sit at one table. And now it is incredibly diverse in a great way, and it's just gigantic.
What was your first big job, and how did you get that? Was there someone who helped you get it? Was it just good timing, good luck? What was that?
Well, back in the early 90s, Matt, before the internet was a thing, if you were a designer like me, you would literally go around town, around New York City, with a portfolio. And what is a portfolio? It is a box with printed samples of your work, and companies, advertising agencies, I work with ad agencies, publishers, blah, blah, blah. They would say, all right, our hours to drop your portfolio off would be drop it off at 9 o'clock on any Wednesday and come pick it up after 4 o'clock, right? The same day. And usually you drop your portfolio off back then, and you'd find a little note, pre-formatted note saying, thank you for doing this. If we have interest, you know where to get us. We know where to get you, blah, blah, blah. Business card, right? Well, in 1990, 1991, Major League Baseball was forming an internal design group for the very first one. And I'm, baseball guy, sports guy, interested in design for sports, found out about this through an article that I read in a magazine, dropped it off, and lo and behold, the note that was in there was, why don't you give us a call? Let's set up a meeting. Well, that meeting took place. Got my foot in the door, and the first job of substance that I was given was a logo for the Los Angeles Dodgers tour of Asia. They went to Taiwan and Japan it was in 1992, going into 1993, and it appeared as a patch on the sleeve of the Dodgers players. So there you go.
What's the Tom Selleck movie, Mr. Baseball?
Yeah, right.
What's your? We're gonna hop around everywhere because I'm a pop culture guy. I'm a sports guy. What's your favorite baseball movie, and then your favorite sports movie overall?
Sports movies are usually awful. Baseball movies are usually awful. They really are. And I have to say that I'm one of these people, and this is going to sound terrible, but I work pretty much in sports, so my reading and my viewing is usually not in sports. It's a little too much of a good thing. But having said that, I'm a fan of Bull Durham, and why is that? Because it's a baseball movie, but it's got a lot of life. It's about growing up. It's about romance. It's about moving around. It's about changes in people's lives. True. So I'm going to go out there with that.
There's my favorite is Field of Dreams. That's one of my favorite movies. I know, sometimes you toe the line. It's like the Die Hard, is it a Christmas movie? Right? Field of Dreams.
It is. Die Hard is a Christmas movie.
Yeah, but I'm just saying people like Field of Dreams is a baseball movie, but it's not like a baseball movie in the sense of Bull Durham and Major League. And
of course.
Yeah, so, For Love of the Game, I know some people like that, another Costner movie. There's a really good movie, a baseball movie. It's almost like Animal House meets Dazed and Confused. It's about a college. I got to remember it. My memory is terrible here. Anyway, okay, so you're into the Major League. You're in with MLB, and how do you? Is it just people see your work and then it expands? Because it sounds like no one really said, "Hey, give this guy a shot," or "You need to talk to this guy." You were walking around and you did it yourself. That's I've tried that. That's tough. Obviously,
hustle. It's hustle. It's word of mouth. But I think as much as anything, and it still applies now, do good work. Be a good partner. Listen, design, any kind of creativity, not any kind, but the kind of stuff that I do, which is created with a commercial purpose in mind. It's very collaborative, right? You got a lot of cooks in the kitchen. There is a meat grinder of a process that exists. So be a good partner, be a good collaborator, stick to your deadlines, and which sounds easy, but not everybody's capable of that. So be an ethical person, price things correctly, all of this stuff. It led me to other places. It allowed me to start working with the NBA and the NFL and with business partners, right? And so, it's been a long time, but that was the path for me. And I will say that it's kind of weird. I mean, now, of course, somebody like me would have a website, have the ability to put your stuff out there on social media, on Instagram. And it's almost, on the one hand, you'd say, well, it's far easier than it used to be. But on the other hand, your website is like it's a little drop of water in the middle of this giant ocean.
Yeah.
So, it's easier, but more difficult.
But the lucky thing about what you guys do is it's visual, right? So your portfolio I know exactly what you're going to do. If I walk around New York City and I was handing out my resume, I mean, you don't know anything about what I'm going to bring to you. You just know what's there. So when you're talking about the visual aspect of it, back in the day is a very good, advantage. And then even here, although there's a ton of people, a lot of good people out there. I mean,
absolutely, yeah. The amount of talent is staggering.
I'm a huge fan of fan artists, and I have a lot of cool stuff. And I think I've talked to you about this, and I got some good stuff on the way. I love it, and it's just some really good, just some great creative. Because you have to be creative, right? And then you got to be technical, and you got to be, you got to be able to do it. So there's some people who are creative, and there's some people who can do it, and there's some people who can do it, and they're not creative. That's to put it all together. That's really, that's impressive, and that's what separates the people who are good artists from the people who are good designers, right? I mean, there's a difference.
Yeah, I mean, to even further what you're talking about, those, the example of fan art, the people who really take it to a whole nother level, which something you didn't mention is passion and knowledge, right? So, if you see somebody creating, we saw this Kobe Bryant art in the last year after his untimely death. The people who got the details right of a certain, time. I mean, right? And now I'm thinking about Kobe Bryant in a blue Lakers jersey, a la what we saw. Getting back to the beginning of the conversation, and it's making me a little nuts. But anyway, yeah. So, passion for the subject matter, details, and knowledge. On top of what you talked about, it's a pretty powerful combination.
I got a great story for you. It's speaking about details. I grew up a Sonics fan. Dale Ellis is my favorite NBA player of all time. I happen to think he's one of the best shooters in the history of the game.
Born too soon.
Yeah. Someone posted. So, my ex-girlfriend was trying to figure out what to get me. Back in the day, I had a Sonics Ellis jersey and Supersonic shorts, and they were ugly as heck, and they were, short shorts. So she's like, I don't know how she got it. So she buys me a Dale Ellis jersey with the newer one. It says Dale Ellis on the back, and the problem is it's number 33. And when you customize something, they don't take returns.
Right.
I have a Dale Ellis 33 jersey hanging up in my closet.
It's a collector's item.
I love the thought, and it's weird because he played for the Spurs, and then he was number 9 on the Spurs.
Hey.
So it could have been worse.
You talk about this stuff and living in the New York area and go to Yankees games for years. Beyond your example of red Yankees hats, all those people in the stands who are wearing throwback jerseys of Joe DiMaggio or Mickey Mantle with their name on it, Mantle 7, right? That's the kind of stuff that makes some people cringe.
Yeah, but there's certain teams that don't even put on, and even now,
like the New York Yankees, for example.
Yeah, but in college too, you see. I mean, I got to tell you, this is very selfish and stupid. But if I'm going to college, I'm not going to a team that doesn't have my name on the back.
Traditions,
traditions. I don't know. Yeah, I get it. I love the stuff that Army Navy does, right? With all the stuff that they have on the back, and now some of the stuff that the NBA was allowing you to put that stuff to me is cool. I always go on. We can go on 100 tangents here.
Absolutely.
Speaking of fan art, one of the things I think I talked about you with, and I'm going to get done, is my Mount Rushmore of sports. Who is in your Mount Rushmore of sports? Any sports? It could be your favorite players or who you think the best are. I like your favorite players. Give me your favorite players. The 4 favorite players. It doesn't. It could be all baseball, but it could be a mix. Who's on your Mount Rushmore?
I think I'm gonna jump around on this a little bit because I have because of what I've done and all that, I have the opportunity to know athletes that I've looked up to, right, as a kid, and that's a very special thing. So I don't know that there is a 4. I'm just gonna absolutely but I'll throw a couple of names out there. Okay, when I was growing up, even though I grew up in the New York area, I was one of these kids that we would go out to Montauk at the eastern end of Long Island for a summer. When I'm about 4 years in a row, my father would go back to the city and work, so I'd be stuck out there with my mother and my brother with kind of nothing to do. And at that time, the only TV that you could get, it was before cable, was from across Long Island Sound. So I'd grow up watching Red Sox games, right? 10, 11 years old. And I loved Carl Yastrzemski and Carlton Fisk growing up, right? Because they were my guys, right? And I hated Reggie Jackson, but I admire Reggie Jackson as a player now more than I could have then because he had such sauce and he was able to pull it off. Mr. October. And then you jump around and, Walt Clyde Frazier was just, you talk about, right? And guys who got the job done, associated with 2 championships in New York, this golden era that has never been replicated in Knicks history, right? And he's still part of the franchise as a commentator. I mean, I can go on and on. I'll give you one.
Terrible actor.
Yeah, well, you know what? But he's got everything else going for him, so that's okay, And then just one athlete who I've gotten to know personally and did see play, who I've always admired for many reasons, and I admire even more now, is Dave Winfield, who is a talk about slam dunk Hall of Famers, first ballot, no brainer, that guy, and plus, just knowing him as a human being, the way he comports himself, his intellectual curiosity, just one of my favorite people.
So my boy Corey, Corey's a big music fan. We actually don't talk about sports much. I have to talk to him, figure out who he likes in sports. We're talking to Todd Radom, author of Fabric of the Game, author of Winning Ugly, designer of all things Major League and Super Bowl logos. I talk about what you said, Reggie Jackson, and who you dislike. Or I hated Peyton Manning. I'm a Gator. We owned him in college. He goes to the pros, and I was a huge fan. I root for him, and then he comes to the Broncos, which is my team. John Elway's on my Mount Rushmore. It's funny, orange and blue is my. That's where I'm at. I had a Mets and Knicks too, so I root for them. Manning, great actor, one of the best. His Saturday Night Live, his commercials, just genius. One of he's unbelievable. His nationwide commercials.
Yes, just stone cold. Like he knows how to work that, and you would never imagine.
Can't get enough of him.
Yeah.
So let's talk about collectibles. You show us some of your tickets, but the funny thing is the details. Like I'm a big old school baseball card collector, and think about when they had the wrong number and the Steve Lyons card.
Billy Ripken.
Yeah, Billy Ripken, right? The F face. What do you collect cards? Did you ever collect cards?
I collected cards when I was a kid, for about 2-3 years, let's say, and I still have them.
Yeah, what's your best card?
Oh, I don't think I have one best, but I love the 1978 Topps set. Okay. Just the look of them, and like I said, as a guy who is not necessarily huge, I've got a couple of signed rare ones that have been given to me as gifts, which I value very much. But, I've never gone out and compulsively assembled a set necessarily.
Yeah.
But, as little pieces of art, cards are awesome. and then of course things went off the rails in the early 90s for so many reasons. But, we all come back to our memories from when we were younger, I think, quite more often than not. And those Topps cards from when I was 12, 13, 14 years old, still I have a place in my heart for them.
I'm talking to Topps now. I got Topps. I got some great ideas. Let's do some stuff.
And real quick, Matt, what Topps did this past year with their 2020, stuff. I mean, it was just unbelievable. You've got artists interpreting great players and great cards of the past, and it obviously reached people and engaged their audience in a way that I don't think anybody could have foreseen. And plus, with everybody, pretty much being home for the last year, it allowed people to look through what they've got at home, re-spark an interest in card collecting. It's pretty cool.
Do you know Brian Kong?
No.
Yeah, he does some great stuff with Topps and cards and Yankees. He's in the New York area. I bought a couple of things when I met him, funny enough, at a Sopranos convention. But he does some great stuff with art and the Yankees and the local teams. Show us, you showed me some tickets. Show us your tickets. Show us some of your favorite tickets that you got here. And let's talk just about, what tickets mean, because you've designed some really awesome tickets. It's obviously going away, and that's why we're here, Ticket Time Machine. But show us some of the tickets, or talk about, some of the great tickets that you have that are real meaningful to you.
So a couple of things. I think, and you and I have discussed this before. Tickets are awesome. They're little time capsules. They are memories. I look at some of these tickets and I think that, I think of people I went to games with, some of whom are no longer with us, right? This kind of thing. And then I think of great moments. And then some of them are just graphically beautiful or beautiful in their plainness, that kind of thing. So I'll get to that in 1 second, but but I've always been a saver of them. I was always a guy who, I would go to a game, and just put the ticket aside. And again, as is the case with so many things, how do these things get saved? How do they survive moves from place to place? How do they survive college? Like that kind of deal. So I'm going to reach over and, I got smart about 10 years ago, and I put the tickets in just binders with sleeves, just so I could know where they were. And for a moment like this, I'll give you a ticket.
Are they organized? They're
just chronologically organized. So here's a ticket. I went to game 1 of the 1977 World Series with my dad, who has not been, my dad passed away in 1984. So this is a really special thing, right? Yankees, Dodgers. Went 12
innings. You sell that ticket, right?
What's that?
You wouldn't sell that ticket.
Never in a million years.
Booger Stubbs is on a Facebook. People are selling these stuff. They get them graded. And the funny thing, like you and me, we don't need to get it graded because we're not selling it.
No.
I like that it's not. I wouldn't want a 77 ticket that's PSA 10.
No, I have no interest whatsoever.
It shouldn't be 10. It should be a 6, and it should have a mustard stain on it or something,
Yeah, and like I said, okay, so another one. I'm a Red Sox fan. There's my ticket to Game 4 of the 2004 World Series when they finally break the curse.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, that's a special fan moment for me. Yeah. Right. And then I've got AllStar games. I've been to a ton of AllStar games, and some of the AllStar game tickets are really cool. So here is the 2008 AllStar game. My ticket to the 2008 AllStar game.
Yeah.
Down here is dirt from Yankee Stadium that's embedded in the ticket. Pretty cool, right? And I mean, so some of them are.
Panini does a good job with those card collecting with fabric from a jersey and dirt and all, But that's really that's awesome.
Totally. So real quick, and again, some of these are just graphically beautiful. And then I've got the plain Janes. Excuse me for leaning over here while I'm getting these. So I look at games that I went to. Here's a ticket from a Mets game in 1977. Went to with my Uncle Gus, who, told me stories about being a New York Giants fan in the 40s and 50s. And it takes me back to a certain place. Then I've got tickets with, that I went to games with buddies. Here's a great ticket for you because it has just a totally stupid story attached to it. but it has warm memories. It's from when I was in high school. It's just a Yankee game in May of 1983. I have a core group of friends, buddies, guys that I grew up with. We're still friends. All of us, we go to a game at Yankee Stadium. We go up, we buy tickets, like 15 of us. We're drinking beer. One of our guys gets up to go to the bathroom. We move 3 sections over just to see him looking around like, where the hell is my seat? This ticket is from that game, right? So it's not profound or important, but it warms my heart, and it's actually a kind of a cool looking ticket in its lack of design. Yeah. And then just last thing, I used to go on these, with a couple of college buddies. We would go on road trips, right? We would rent a car and drive to Chicago, and drink beer and go to games and just enjoy each other's company. Here's a ticket from a game we went to in Montreal.
Oh yeah,
right. And it's just right. It's not an important game, but it's important to me.
No, there's no one ever is going to have another ticket from Montreal.
Right, and so to your point earlier, like none of these are valuable. None of them are worth anything.
Actually, some of them are, but it's still stuff you wouldn't.
Yeah, but the worth to me and to thinking about these memories, that's where the value lies.
That's a great story. The movement. I don't know if Brent or Frank are still listening, but that sounds like something that we do with we still do that today, and we're not in high school anymore. But do you have any trips that you take every year that are just tradition?
Boy, it's hard to think about in the last year, right? Well, being a business partner of Major League Baseball, I did go to the AllStar Game for 26 straight years until there was none this past summer. So that's always been part of a ritual, just been part of my summer for many years.
That's part of an AllStar Game for you.
Catching up with friends, certainly, knowing that having been to all those AllStar Games, I've seen every great player. Getting back to our Hall of Fame conversation, just automatically, you're going to see every great player play, even if the games are kind of meaningless, right? And also, seeing a city and how a city can kind of like put on a show, right? I think about, going to, even most recently being in Cleveland in 2019 for 4 days and seeing how an event like that can take over a city in a great way. It's pretty awesome. And I love travel. I love travel of all kinds. So when you combine travel with sports and friendship, it's all good.
We do it every year. And Frankie says we let the inner children loose. We're
keep ourselves young here.
Pranking each other. Brent is probably the best prankster. He's gotten us on some good ones. We could do a whole show on pranks. We love to travel too. We have a group of friends who go to a Major League Baseball, college football, and pro football game every year. Last year was supposed to be our 20th year. It's called Sports Weekend. We pick a different city. We're going to go somewhere this year. I don't know where, but it's just we need it. It's about going and hanging out with the guys, but it's about seeing cool cities and eating good food and just laughing and. So,
yeah, totally. And like I said, I'm lucky. I've got a core group of college friends as well, aside from, the guys I talked to about earlier. It's a totally different group of people. But yeah, I look forward to a time when, maybe 3-4 of us go to a game in Baltimore or go to it doesn't have to be insane. Go to a Phillies game or something like that just to be together. And I miss it. We all do.
Baseball stadiums are the best. We've been to so many venues, but baseball stadiums are the best. It's not even. You can design a $5 billion football. The baseball is never going to beat the experience of a baseball stadium and the uniqueness that some of them have. And do you have a favorite?
Being a history guy, I love Fenway Park. I love Wrigley Field. It's not the most comfortable experience in the world, but I'm not necessarily interested in that. There are a ton of I have seen games in more than 50 MLB stadiums, including a ton that are no longer around. I'm happy I got to old Comiskey Park before it went down, even places like Exhibition Stadium in Toronto. So I think everyone is special, truly. because, I mean, obviously there are some that are better than others. I love going to Citi Field. I'm not a Mets fan, but I think it's a great place to see a game.
Yeah, so I went to Citi and then the Yankees, and I said, look, Yankee Stadium is it's Yankee Stadium, but Citi Field is a much better environment for watching a baseball game.
Yeah, I love the fact that I could walk around the whole thing. If I'm with a couple of buddies and we don't want to pay attention to the game, and all of us are like this these days. There's just no getting around it. For a game in August that's kind of, doesn't have a whole lot of meaning, it is. Yeah, and the current Yankee Stadium, and I'm old enough to have gone to the original one from 1923, went to hundreds of games at the renovated one from 1976, and I've been to the current one many, many, many times. It's big and it's imposing, and it's quite different from the old one, that's for sure.
What's your feeling on indoor baseball? I mean, I like the Marlins thing. I don't like that we can't tailgate anymore. I do like indoor baseball in a way. It's what you do with it inside is always good, and what's surrounding outside. But what's your feeling on it?
Yeah, listen, in a place like Miami, I was there a couple of years ago in AllStar Game, as a matter of fact, and I went to the old ballpark too, and to know that there's going to be a game is a pretty good thing. Air conditioning is a wonderful invention. I'm a big proponent of air conditioning, and so I think that as I always say and just briefly, I do the ESPN Baseball Tonight podcast every week during the season, right? And last season, we did like a road trip around the majors to stadiums, and we talked about Marlins Stadium, and it's like, you know what? That's a ballpark that fits that city. It looks like it belongs there, and the fact that that you're going to go to a game and you're not going to get rained out that's not a bad thing.
No, it's not. So speaking of the Marlins, I started this company because I was at Edinson Volquez's no-hitter. Have you been to a no-hitter?
I have never been to a no-hitter. The closest I've gotten was Cleveland Indians opening day in, I think, 1991, when Kevin Brown took one into maybe the seventh inning, maybe. But no, I've never been to a no-hitter.
He threw one for the Marlins too, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like nothing. I mean, the tension. And I'm nervous for him. It was like nothing I've ever seen, and it's non-championship moments. It's in my top 5 experiences. Do you have a game that stands out to you?
Oh my goodness, I've been to. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I've never been to a no-hitter. I've been to 2 binders of this many MLB games in my life, and I've seen great performances.
The most impressive performance, if you don't have a favorite game.
The most impressive. Wow. I mean, I was there for Pedro Martinez's All-Star Game in '99 when he, mowed down some of the great National League hitters over the course of 2 innings. I saw Tom Glavine pitch most of a one-hitter in the deciding game of the 1995 World Series. Highly underrated. I saw Greg Maddux pitch World Series games. Right?
They won one championship, right?
I was there for it in Atlanta in 1995. Yeah.
One of the great mysteries in sports is how they only won one championship.
Yeah, and part of the great thing about sports is the fact, Matt, that we can, you never know when you're going to see an amazing, if you and I were to go to a game, and again, it's so nice to think about, and fingers crossed, sometime in 2021, you could see a player hit 4 home runs. You could see a perfect game. There have only been a handful of perfect games, and you don't know what's going to happen. A little bit different than football. Nobody's ever going to throw for 10 touchdowns in an NFL game, that kind of thing. Yeah. I don't know what but the randomness of a summer game, baseball game, could turn to something special. You just never know. Yeah.
Frankie says we need Mattingly in the Hall of Fame. Mattingly is my twin brother's favorite player growing up, and my friend Dave Gabriel, who I don't know if he's listening, but I'll tell him to tune in. Die-hard Yankee fan. Mattingly he lives down here. Mattingly's his favorite. Is he a Hall of Famer?
I don't think so. I think the career was a little bit too short. And believe me, I went to 20 Yankees games a year back in the 80s. In his home run streak, I was in the bleachers, just missed one of those home runs in the summer of, I think, '87. stellar career, but comes up a little bit short because it wasn't long enough.
So let's talk about streaks and stuff like that. Is DiMaggio the only record that'll never? Is that the one that's never going to be broken, or do you think someone will get it?
I don't think anybody could ever get it.
Yeah.
I mean, I just think, the odds of, just think about it. It's just crazy. Nobody really come close. Pete Rose had that long streak in
40s,
44 games, whatever it was. Think about what has to happen right. A little, a ball just escaping the glove of an infielder.
Baseball's game of inches.
Yeah. So I think it's highly unlikely.
And it's also like, I joked about this somewhere, like you fail 7 out of 10 times, you're a Hall of Famer and a millionaire.
Yeah. And how about Nolan Ryan's career number of no-hitters? Especially with guys not pitching perfect games or complete games now. I don't know when that comes back, if it ever does. There's no way that's ever going to be broken.
Yeah. Is there any other, like Ripken, they'll never be broken, right? I mean,
Ripken's a tough one. Somebody it could happen. There are people who, of course, never thought that Gehrig's streak would be surpassed. I guess it's possible. You could have somebody who, are we going to have player managers again where somebody decides to keep themselves in a lineup in order to manipulate a streak like that? I think it's highly unlikely.
Are you a purist? I mean, do you like the DH? Do you like them going DH both? What do you like these rule changes? What
bring the DH on? Make it. I don't want to see pitchers hit. Yeah. I don't. I've never want to it's. I think that as I am not a purist, I am in certain respects, but I think the game needs to move along at a little bit of a better pace, and having a DH universally is fine by me.
I like conformity. If you want the pitchers to do it, then let's do it in both leagues. Not that I want to see them.
Yeah, there's always been like a weird charm to the fact that they were different in each league, and you go to a national league, it's a national league game, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, well, we're in overtime here. I'm not going to ask you. We do a little rapid fire, and then we'll tell everyone. Todd Radom, we'll tell everyone how they can get in touch with you and how they can get your book and all that. Do you have a bucket list? I know I talked to someone else who's been to so many. Do you have a bucket list sporting event that you've never been to?
Russ? I am not.
He's a big ticket collector.
Oh yeah, Russ. Yep, I love his stuff on socials. Yeah, bucket list. I'm not a soccer fan, but I think it would be really cool to go to a World Cup and see kind of like the atmosphere around it. A Kentucky Derby, same kind of a thing. Never been to it. A cool event to go to.
Yeah, I'd love to get there. Have you been to a soccer game, like just a general soccer game?
Yeah, I have been. And I feel like I'm remiss in not being more intellectually curious about soccer. But I would love to go to a soccer game in England or Italy or someplace like that. I think I would totally do it.
My friend Mike is a Liverpool fanatic. He lives in Liverpool, and he's Liverpool, like on the Gators. Have you been to a Japanese baseball game?
No, that's another bucket list item, man. It's funny. Absolutely. I was emailing yesterday with somebody I know who's in the Navy right now, who is being moved. He's going to be stationed in Japan and loves sports, loves baseball. And I'm like, maybe you could get to a game at some point when you're on leave. That would be really cool.
My brother and I, again, he won a trip to Japan, and we went and saw a baseball game on our own, and we invited some people. And they have a tradition where they blow up balloons, and in the 7th inning, they let it fly. And I always tell this story. We buy the balloons, and it's 7th inning comes, and I'm trying to blow, and I can't get the balloon to go. I don't know why. And this lady behind me starts yelling at me, but she's yelling at me in Japanese, and I don't understand a word she's saying. And she keeps yelling. I'm like, look, lady, I can't get the balloon to go. But it's really cool to see them all fly. It's definitely.
I was going to say I have been to games in Cuba. I went to Cuba in the late '90s and saw professional, quote unquote, professional big league games. Their equivalent of that back then, and that was a very cool experience. And also, I did the branding for the World Baseball Classic, so I went to the first World Baseball Classic final in San Diego in 2006. Saw Cuba and Japan, and this very familiar sport to us. Seeing how guys warm up and all that was pretty cool.
What do you think about them eliminating baseball from the Olympics?
Baseball's got to keep growing the game. Baseball hasn't been part of the Olympics formally for a while.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's a kind of a warning cry almost that baseball needs to keep the game growing internationally, and Europe too. I mean, I have friends of mine who live in Holland. Kids played baseball. They're huge baseball fans. They're Dutch people.
Yeah, the only the Olympics baseball that I remember is Mark McGwire on his rookie card in the Olympics. That's the thing that sticks out to me. A couple more, bucket list travel. Where haven't you been? You said you like to travel, non-sports. Where would you travel that you haven't been to?
Oh, there are so many places. I mean, and I will say that so 2020, the year of shutdown, my wife and I took 2 trips to Europe in 2020, one in January, one in February. We went to Morocco in January 2020, went to Spain, went to Morocco. I want to go more, been to most of Europe. I do want to go to Japan. The world is such a big place. I haven't been to England since I was a kid. I have family there. I want to go back. There are just so many places. I don't even know where to start.
Have you been to Ireland?
I've been to Ireland, loved it, absolutely. Went there several years ago, the week between Christmas and New Year, which was just beautiful because it was so not warm outside, but warm inside. And,
it's the whole country. It's very easy to just go.
Yeah, right. I was in Scotland a couple of years ago, but I want to go to places that are a little more, exotic outside of our comfort zones.
Yeah. So last question, I'm going to do a little twist on it, but I usually ask everyone, you have 24 hours, one person, who is it, and what are you guys doing? My caveat is usually that they have to be alive and not your family member. Give me 2. Give me someone who's alive and an athlete who isn't.
An athlete?
Well, the athlete who isn't alive that you'd like to hang out with, but the person could be anyone.
Okay. So I'm going to go really weird with a person, but I don't think it's so weird. I would love to spend a day with Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin was just this, we think about our founding fathers and they're all like, they look like they're on the currency. Benjamin Franklin was like a real guy. You know what I mean? And he had an intellectual curiosity about Benjamin Franklin would be a cool guy to go to a ball game with. I almost guarantee it. Okay. And we could talk about all kinds of things together. Yeah. Right.
How about living?
So living, any individual person?
It doesn't have to be sports. It could be anyone.
Anyone? Wow.
4 hours. What are you guys doing, and who is it?
I don't even know where to go with that, Matt. It is just so expansive.
Oprah, Obama, Tiger.
Yeah, I mean, both would be pretty interesting people. I've met Bill Clinton a number of times, so it's like, very cool experience. Talk baseball with him, as a matter of fact. I would really have to think about it. It could be an entertainer that I'm not thinking of at the moment. I have no idea. I would want to.
Because one of the things that I do is ask everyone that, and my goal is to actually make it happen for one of my guests. So I need to know, because we're gonna make it happen for someone.
I'm gonna have to come back to you on that. It's just too much to comprehend right now.
Yeah. Look, Todd Radom, great to have you on here. I could talk to you for hours and hours about 10 different things. So we really appreciate you. Last time, tell everyone about your book, where they can get it, what you're working on next, how they can get in touch with you, and we'll wrap it up.
Well, Matt, first of all, thank you so much. Great conversation. So happy to do this. I appreciate the opportunity. ToddRadom.com, as we see scrolling across the feed over here. That's my site out there on the socials, at Todd Radom, mostly Twitter, Instagram. And things I'm working on now, a bunch of smaller things, nothing catastrophically huge right now. And that ebbs and flows, but always keeping creative and always keeping the line moving.
And Fabric of the Game, they could get that at your
Fabric of the Game second printing just arrived at the Simon & Schuster warehouse yesterday. Okay. The first printing sold out in 48 hours, incredibly successful. Awesome. So if people have been looking for it and haven't been able to find it, this is a good week. And so it's out there. So you can find it wherever books are sold, as we say.
Will there be another book?
We're talking about it. Got to sell this one.
Pardon? Just another book. It could be Fabric of the Game, another one, or just another book.
You know, writing a book, you need to like come down off of it, sell the thing, exhale deeply, and then kind of like get moving again. And I'm at the exhaling deeply part because it's a lot of work.
Is it easier the second time?
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so. I think so. And I think that, you know, there's just less, there's more familiarity, and the process is a little more like, where do you start?
Yeah. Who are you rooting for, and who's going to win Sunday?
I think it's going to be a good game. I'm kind of in a way rooting for Brady and the Bucks. I want to see him kind of, you know, I admire him as an athlete and not being part of the Patriots system. It's a fascinating story at age 43. You know, be pretty awesome.
Got great people around them too. But how cool is it that you win in your own stadium too? That would be
it's true.
That'd be really cool. All right. And Todd Radom, thanks for coming. Happy Friday. Everyone have a great weekend. Enjoy the Super Bowl responsibly. Have some wings, drink some beer, whatever it is that is your favorite. And we got some guests. Stay tuned for some great guests next week. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you, Matt.